I remember how I died. The fire was warm on my face. That's the strange thing I remember most. Not the pain, not the screaming, the warmth, like standing too close to a campfire on a cold night. Almost comfortable, almost peaceful. Except my hands were tied behind my back, except the fire was made from wood pulled from my own house, except the thing burning over those flames was my mother. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Stella. I'm 21 years old. I was a junior virologist. I studied viruses for a living in a small lab 2 towns from where I grew up. I wasn't famous. I wasn't brilliant in the way people write books about. I just worked hard every single day, harder than everyone else. That was enough, usually. I grew up in Harlow Creek, a farming community barely on any map. Old houses, dirt roads, cornfields in every direction. One store, one church, one well that half the village shared. My parents, Ray and Clara, worked that land their whole lives. Calloused hands, tired backs, wide smiles. We were poor and we knew it, but we never really felt it because every night my mother cooked dinner and my father told bad jokes and we laughed around a table that wobbled on one short leg. We never fixed that table leg. In my first life, it was still broken the night they burned her. It was ours. Broken and ours. I need to tell you what happened. All of it. Even the parts that are hard to say. Because you need to understand what I came back to fix. The day everything broke. It started 3 weeks before the end. I came home from the lab early. There had been reports, strange reports, of an illness spreading through 2 counties east of us, the kind that made people behave wrong, violent, erratic, like something had switched off the part of the brain that makes you human. My supervisor, Dr. Kell, had been on the phone for 6 hours straight, and when he finally came out of his office, his face was the color of old paper. "Go home, Stella," he said. "Spend time with your family." That scared me more than any news report. When I pulled up to the farm, my father was on the porch with a glass of water, watching the sky turn orange. I sat down next to him without explaining why I was home early. He didn't ask. That was my father, Ray Mitchell, the quietest kind of strength. My mother came out 20 minutes later with fried corn and potatoes. We ate in the warm evening air, the 3 of us, listening to the fields breathe. This is where I should have memorized everything. The smell of it, the sound of his voice, the way she hummed while she carried the plates out. I didn't know that yet. For one night, it felt like nothing bad could reach us. I was wrong. By day 6, people weren't waving anymore. By day 7, they were locking doors. By day 8, they were choosing who to blame. The television had stopped saying illness and started saying infected, and then stopped saying anything at all. The broadcast just stopped. In the silence that followed, something worse moved in. The particular fear that doesn't make people reach for each other, but instead makes them look at their neighbors and start calculating. The first case in Harlow Creek was old Mr. Denner, bitten on his weekly run to town. We didn't know that then. We just saw him walking strange, slow, head tilted to one side, left arm hanging like he'd forgotten it was attached. Someone went to check on him. That was the last anyone heard from Caleb Marsh. That name. I should have written it down the first time. I didn't. There were a lot of things I didn't do the first time. Here's something you need to understand about Harlow Creek. The virus didn't create what happened next. It just gave it permission. People had always watched our family differently. My parents worked hard, harder than most, and it showed. Old farmhouse, well-kept, small generator, working truck, root cellar full of preserved food. Nothing fancy, just years of careful, unglamorous work that some people had decided to resent instead of replicate. My Uncle Gerald, my father's younger brother, had wanted our property for years. He came for Sunday dinners, ate my mother's food, laughed with my father, and then spent 30 minutes after dessert talking about how this land would be worth a lot to the right buyer. My father always smiled and changed the subject. Gerald never stopped. Marcus Boyle, who ran the general store, had been undercutting my father on crop prices for years. The Pearsons had accused my parents of acting above their station because my mother started a vegetable exchange that gave people food at fair prices instead of Marcus's inflated ones. Small things, old grudges, the kind people carry for years without ever meaning to use. I noticed them, filed them away. I told myself they would never matter. They started to matter on the 8th day. I remember the sound of boots on our porch. It was past midnight. I was still awake at the kitchen table, notes spread out. Everything I knew about the virus, everything I'd pieced together from the lab's partial data. I heard them coming, and I knew, even before the door crashed open, what the sound meant. I had been waiting for it without knowing I was waiting for it. 12 of them, maybe 15. Torches and flashlights, faces set in the particular hardness of people who have already decided what they are about to do and no longer need to justify it. Marcus Boyle at the front. Gerald, just behind him, wearing an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, satisfaction. "Get up," Marcus said to my father. "All of you." My father raised his hands calmly. "Marcus, what's happening?" "You know what's happening. You've been hoarding supplies, medicine. You think you're better than the rest of us." "That's not true," my mother said quietly from the doorway. "Don't speak," someone in the back yelled. The voice cracked with something uglier than anger. Pleasure. "They've been hiding food while our children are hungry." That was Linda Pearson. "We know it. We all know it." "You're welcome to check if anyone needs food. Clara and I have always—" "Shut up, Ray." That was Gerald. My father looked at his brother. Something moved across his face. Not surprise. Something sadder than surprise. Recognition. The look of a man realizing a thing he had been hoping wasn't true. "Gerald," he said softly, "what did you do?" Gerald said nothing. They took us outside to an old livestock pen behind the Boyle property, the kind used for goats, and threw the bolt on the gate. They didn't even argue about it among themselves. That was the part that stayed with me, not the cage. How easy it was, how little discussion it required. They had clearly already decided, and the deciding had been the hard part, and now they were just doing the thing they had decided. My mother held my hand the whole night. My father sat against the fence post and stared at the stars and said it was going to be all right, in the voice of a man who genuinely believed it. And I didn't say anything at all, because I already knew some things about how people behave when they're scared, and I knew it was not going to be all right. The next morning, they looted our house, and I watched it through the cage bars. They didn't divide it carefully. They grabbed, argued over things. One man dropped my father's toolbox in the dirt and left it there. Linda Pearson walked out with my mother's winter coat over her arm like she'd paid for it. My mother's sewing box, her own mother's, painted blue with small yellow flowers, went into Marcus Boyle's truck without ceremony, without even a glance in our direction. Like we were already gone. Like the problem of us had already been resolved. "You can't do this," I said. My voice was flat. I was working very hard to keep it that way. "You have no right." "You don't have rights anymore," Marcus Boyle said, still not looking at me. "None of you do." Gerald stood in front of the cage late that afternoon and looked at my father for a long time without speaking. Then, "I always told you, Ray, that land is worth too much to waste on just one family." "It's our land," my father said. "Our father's land." "Not anymore." He walked away. That evening, they built the fire. I won't describe everything. Some things, once you put them into words, never leave you. They move in and stay and never pay rent. I will say this much. My mother, in those last minutes, looked at me through the bars and didn't cry. Her eyes were steady, full of something I've spent every day since trying to understand. It was love. Pure, undesperate love. Not panicked, not bargaining, just, I love you. I see you. You are going to be okay. My father held her hand until he couldn't anymore. I screamed until my voice broke. Then I kept screaming without any sound coming out, just the motion of it, just the shape of a scream, because my body didn't know what else to do. The villagers ate by firelight that night. They laughed. I watched their faces through the bars. Some of them looked uncomfortable for a moment, a brief flicker of something that might have been conscience, and then they ate more, and the discomfort passed, and they laughed again. That was the part I couldn't forget. Not the fire. The laughing after. How quickly the uncomfortable feeling passed once the food was in front of them. They had a choice. They always had a choice. This is where everything broke the first time. I am telling you this so you understand what I was carrying when I woke up. Not grief, not yet. Grief comes later, in the dark, when you have time for it. What I was carrying was simpler and heavier than grief. Purpose. And then, before they could come back for me, we heard the sounds from the northern fence. Low, wet sounds, shuffling. Then a scream. Then the fence broke. They came flooding in, dozens of them, moving with that horrible, slow certainty that the infected have. Not running, just coming. Relentless. The villagers scattered. Marcus Boyle made it 3 steps before one of them took him down. Linda Pearson ran toward the road. Gerald ran toward our house and locked himself inside. The infected surrounded it within minutes. I was still in the cage. The lock had broken when someone ran into it during the chaos. I pushed the door open and stood in the middle of all that madness, barefoot in the dirt, feeling nothing because I had cried everything out, and there was nothing left. One of the infected turned toward me. This is fine. There is nothing left anyway. It reached me. Sharp pain in my neck. And then everything went dark. I woke up screaming. The ceiling was white. My bedroom ceiling. The old water stain in the corner shaped like a boot. I sat up so fast I fell off the bed. My hands. They weren't tied. They were free. I pressed them against my face and felt the warmth, the pulse, the impossible realness of them. "Stella," my mother's voice from downstairs. I couldn't breathe. "Stella, breakfast is ready." I walked to the door with shaking legs, one at a time, gripping the railing. My mother was in the kitchen, alive, standing at the stove in her yellow apron, frying eggs, humming something low. I grabbed her behind and held her so tight she made a small surprised sound. "Don't," I said. Just give me a second." She turned and held me back. Didn't ask why, just held me. Hey, you're still here. If this story is resonating with you and you haven't subscribed yet, taking a second to do so really helps me keep creating stories like this. All right, let's get back to it. My father came in from outside, muddy boots, cap in his hand, and stopped when he saw us. "Everything okay?" I pulled back. I looked at both of them. Really looked. "What's the date?" I said. "The 4th, my father said. "March 4th. Stella, are you all right?" March 4th. The outbreak had started on April 7th in my memory. I had 33 days. I sat down right there on the kitchen floor and held the question that had been burning since I opened my eyes. Why was I back? I had one theory. The virus had entered my blood when it bit me, and my blood was different. Dr. Kell had noticed an anomaly just days before the first outbreak, something he'd circled in red pen and said they'd look at next week. There was no next week. So, had the virus interacted with that strange immune marker and done something to my dying brain? Rewound it? Reset it? Was it biology? Was it a miracle? I didn't know, and standing up off that floor, I made a deliberate choice to stop caring. Some questions are luxuries. I couldn't afford luxuries. I had 33 days. That was the only answer that mattered. What happens when you come back changed? I sat at the kitchen table for 4 minutes. I know it was 4 minutes because I counted. I ran through everything I knew, everything I remembered, everything I had seen and lost and felt. Then I stood up, drank the glass of water on the table in one long pull, and set it down. And I became a different kind of person. Not colder, not harder. Those words aren't right. More focused, like the difference between a candle and a laser. Same light, different purpose. I had 33 days to save my parents, 33 days to prepare, 33 days to make sure that when April 7th came, every single person in Harlow Creek who had chosen cruelty would face something they were not prepared for. Not me. Consequences. Step 1. The uncle. I went to see Gerald the next morning. He was in his usual spot. Porch, coffee, tree line, that quiet calculating expression he wore when he thought no one was watching. I sat down across from him and told him I needed money, that Dad would never sell the fields, but maybe the villa, the main house, just the house, and I kept my voice casual and my face soft and young, and I watched him recalibrate in real time, trying to figure out if this was a trap, deciding it wasn't. "I'm being practical, Gerald," I said. "You always say I need to be more practical." He had said that. 3 Christmases ago, he'd meant it as an insult. Now I was using it as a key. Gerald smiled. That smile told me everything I needed to know about who he really was underneath the family dinners and Sunday handshakes. "I think we can work something out," he said. "Good," I said. I smiled back. His smile was hunger. Mine was patience. We signed the preliminary papers 4 days later, and the contract was not what Gerald thought it was. What I actually needed from him was not money. What I needed was for him and Marcus and their crew to consolidate, to bring their supplies, weapons, and fuel, everything they were planning to use to seize control of the village, into a single location, one I had already prepared. The contract gave him right of access from the signing date, meaning he could start moving things in immediately, use the villa as his staging ground. I suggested this to him indirectly, the way you suggest things to greedy people, by mentioning offhand that the cellar was large, the storage was good, the outbuildings sturdier than they looked. He took the bait. Over the following 2 weeks, Gerald moved his emergency stores into the villa. Marcus contributed from the back of his store. Pete Lander brought a rifle and fuel canisters. Tom Voss brought a generator. They thought they were building a stronghold. They were building a trap. Because on day 15, I went back at 2 in the morning to make 3 quiet changes. I replaced the gate latch with one that could only be opened from the outside. I swapped the back door deadbolt for one that seized under pressure from within. And I pulled 4 fence stakes on the north side of the yard, the side facing the open field, the direction the infected would come from, and replaced them with stakes driven only a few inches into the earth. They looked solid. They would not hold. Gerald was building a fortress with broken exits and a fence that would fail exactly where it mattered most. He thought he was the most dangerous person in Harlow Creek. He had been moving pieces on my board the entire time. Step 2. The cameras. I drove to the city on a Thursday, hit 4 electronics stores, paid cash for everything. Micro cameras the size of a shirt button, battery-powered, wireless, motion-activated, the kind you hide behind a clock face and no one ever finds. 3 portable hard drives, a satellite radio, medical supplies, antibiotics, a water filtration system. I spent almost everything in my savings account. Every bill felt like a decision, like control coming back into my hands one purchase at a time. That night, I went to the villa and installed 9 cameras in 90 minutes. Living room, kitchen, both hallways, front porch, back door, spots no one checks, spots no one even looks at. I drove home, hid the connection under a loose floorboard, lay back on my bed and stared at the boot-shaped water stain on the ceiling. "Okay, Gerald," I said quietly, "start talking." Step 3. The virus. Here is what I already knew from my first life. The virus, HX Calder, named for the town where the first confirmed case appeared, spread through fluid contact, bites primarily, but also blood to blood if someone had an open wound. It moved fast, 8 to 12 hours from exposure to first symptoms, another 12 to 24 until full transition. After that, the person you knew was gone. What remained operated on pure aggression and hunger. No reasoning, no recognition, no coming back. I didn't know most of this the first time. I learned it too late in a burning village, watching the people I loved run out of time. In my first life, Dr. Kell had flagged something in my routine blood work just days before everything collapsed, an unusual immune cell variant, circled in red pen, with a note, "Worth a follow-up. Not seen this before." There was no follow-up. The world ended first. In this life, I had 33 days to figure out what he'd seen. I told Dr. Kell I wanted extra research hours. He signed the paperwork without looking up. I spent 2 weeks running every test I could, working backward from his anomaly, and what I found was this. The variant appeared to aggressively neutralize viral particles before they could replicate. Not magic, not a superpower, just my particular biology doing something slightly better than average, in a way that might, with the right equipment and the right team, be replicable. It wouldn't stop infection entirely, but it would slow it. A normal person bitten by the infected, gone within a day. Me, potentially days longer. Long enough to think, long enough to act. This is what they never understood, what no one understood because there was no time. This is the thing that could change everything if I could get it to the right people before the world finished falling apart. A small town lab could take me so far. What I had was the foundation, the map, not the destination. I wrote it all in a notebook I kept in my jacket pocket at all times. No computers, just pen and paper, just facts. It would have to be enough to get me to people who could build the rest. Step 4. My parents. This was the hardest part because I couldn't tell them everything. If I had sat down with my mother and father and said the true thing, that in 30 days a virus would destroy the world and the people they trusted would kill them, they would have held my hands with worried faces and maybe called the doctor. They wouldn't have believed me, not because they were foolish, but because they were good. Because good people struggle to believe in that level of evil until they see it themselves. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for them to see it. So I was careful. "Dad," I said one evening while we fixed the east fence, "can we work on the root cellar this weekend? Double the supplies." He asked if I was worried about something. I said there was a bad flu going around 2 counties over. He nodded, didn't push, trusted me. We spent that weekend filling the cellar. Food, water, fuel, first aid, and my father added his toolbox without being asked. "You're not telling me something," he said Sunday evening, sitting on the cellar steps with a wrench he'd been turning over in his hands. "If you're in trouble, if there's something you're not saying, you have to tell me. I can't help you if I don't know what I'm helping with." I held his gaze for a long moment. "Something is coming," I said. "Something bad enough that I need you and Mom to trust me and follow my lead when the time comes. I can't tell you everything yet. Not because I don't trust you, because there are things you'd have a hard time believing, and I need you to believe me when it matters most." He was quiet for a while, the field breathing around us. Then, "You're scared, but you're doing something about it. That's my girl." My throat tightened. "I love you, Dad." He put his arm around my shoulders and squeezed once. "I know. Now let's get your mother to feed us. All this worrying is hungry work." On day 19, the cameras delivered. Gerald in the villa kitchen, Marcus Boyle, Pete Lander, and Tom Voss. I put my headphones on. "Can't just take it," Pete was saying. "Even with everything going on, Ray's not going to—" "Ray doesn't matter." Gerald poured himself a drink. "Comfortable, like a man already at home. When things get bad enough, people stop caring about ownership. They start caring about survival." "And you're sure it's going to get bad?" "There's something coming. When it hits, and it will hit, people panic. They look for someone to blame, someone who has what they don't." He smiled. His eyes were cold. Gerald Mitchell's family has always had more than they should. More than they deserve, Marcus said. 4 words with so much venom packed inside. Gerald shrugged. When the time comes, we move fast. Property, supplies, all of it comes to us. No courts, no law, nothing. The girl works in some lab. They'll say she brought it here. That's the story. Easy. Silence. Then Pete said, "What about Ray himself? He won't go quiet." Gerald didn't answer immediately. He took a long drink. "No," he said finally, "he won't." I stopped the recording. There it is, that pause before the answer, a man working out how far he is willing to go and deciding the answer is as far as necessary. I sat in the dark for a long time. I had known, somewhere deep down, since I woke up in the second life, but knowing and hearing are different things. Hearing it in his voice, calm and practical like he was planning a grocery run, was something else entirely. That was the moment I stopped feeling sad. I felt clear, sharp, finished. I copied the recording to all 3 hard drives, not for any court, there would be no tribunals in what was coming. I saved it for myself, so that if I ever doubted, if distance made memory soft, I could press play and hear his voice and remember exactly who these people were before the world gave them permission to stop pretending. I had 24 days left before April 7th. The plan takes shape. Real revenge isn't about anger. Anger burns too hot. It destroys the person holding it as fast as it destroys its target. Real revenge is cold, architectural. It takes time, patience, and the ability to smile at a person you despise. I had all of those things now. I would let Gerald and Marcus and the others believe they were in control. Smile at Sunday dinners, wave from the truck, be Stella Mitchell, the quiet girl from Harlow Creek, unremarkable and easily dismissed. Meanwhile, 3 months of supplies in the root cellar, 6 recorded conversations saved not as evidence, but as a record, my research notebook updated every night, and the exits of Gerald's fortress quietly, carefully, permanently disabled. Gerald thought he was the one doing the planning. He had been moving pieces on my board the entire time. The night before. April 6th. I sat on the porch with my parents that evening. Warm air, cut grass, something sweet from the apple tree on the south side finally blooming. My mother had her reading glasses pushed up on her head. My father was telling a bad joke about a farmer and a weather vane. I laughed at the punchline. "There she is," my father said. "Was starting to worry you'd forgotten how." "I've just been busy," I said. "You're always busy." My mother tucked a piece of hair behind my ear, the way she had since I was small. "But you're here." "I'm here," I agreed. She smiled, and in that smile I saw everything. The early mornings, the sacrifices so I could go to university, the way they never once made me feel like I owed them anything for it. They gave freely. That was who they were. I looked out at the fields, past Gerald's villa with its broken latches and false security, past the Boyle store, past all the familiar shapes of this village that had been my whole world. Tomorrow, old Mr. Denner would come back from town with a bite on his left forearm. He would feel sick, go to bed early, and by midnight, he would no longer be Mr. Denner. By morning, the northern fence would be the only thing standing between Harlow Creek and what was coming from the eastern road, and Gerald's fence, the 4 shallow stakes on the north side, would not be standing for long. "I love you both," I said. My mother looked at me with soft surprise. "We love you too, baby." My father, "Everything okay?" "Everything is perfect," I said. I went to my room at 10 o'clock. Checked everything. Root cellar full and sealed, notebook in my inside pocket, hard drives updated, camera feed live from the villa where Gerald and Marcus sat tense and watchful, convinced they were prepared. They had stocked a room I had rigged to become a cage. I watched Gerald pour himself a drink at what used to be my family's counter, in what used to be my family's house, looking out of what used to be my family's window. I closed the laptop. Outside, the fields were quiet. The apple tree breathed. Somewhere, far to the east, on a road we couldn't see, something was moving in the dark. Patient, hungry, coming closer. I stared at the boot-shaped water stain on my ceiling, thought about my mother's hands, my father's voice, the wobbly table leg we never fixed, the cage, the fire, the warmth I had mistaken for something peaceful. Gerald's voice on the recording, calm, practical, already decided. When the time comes, we move fast. Yes, I said softly, to the dark and the silence, and whatever strange miracle had put me back here with time and knowledge and the cold, clean purpose of someone who has already lost everything once and is not going to lose it again. Yes, Gerald, when the time comes. Tomorrow had arrived. I knew exactly who would live. I knew exactly who would not. And for the first time in this second life, for the first time since I woke up screaming in this room with clean hands and a second chance and a heart full of everything I had already lost, I was ready. The last thing I thought before I fell asleep was not about Gerald, not about the fence, the cameras, the locks, the plan. It was about my father telling a bad joke at the table with the short leg that wobbled. The joke wasn't even funny, but he told it anyway, because that was who he was. And my mother laughed anyway, because that was who she was. And I had sat there watching them and thought, I am saving this. This time, I decide who survives. But there was one thing I hadn't planned for. One name that wasn't on any of my lists, one face I hadn't seen on a camera feed, or in the crowd by the fire, or anywhere in the village at all. Someone who already knew what I was. Someone who had been watching me the entire time. End of part 1. If you enjoyed this story, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves dark fantasy, and subscribe for more zombie, horror, and revenge stories. I'll see you in the next nightmare.